Hi, I'm Kristen Bakke, the host of No Filter. We are in Hibbing, Minnesota today, and we have a guest we are so excited to share with you. Today, we're introducing you to Scott Dahlquist. He is a competitive ski drawer. He has a passion for raising dogs. He's a silent sport enthusiast and a self-proclaimed philosopher. He has quite the story to tell. I can't wait to introduce you to Scott Dahlquist. Scott, thank you so much for joining us on No Filter.
My pleasure.
Happy to have you here.
Thanks.
So we're going to go back a little bit before we talk about the present. You moved around a lot, is my understanding.
Yeah, seems to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was told that I've moved a lot. It didn't seem like it. It just seemed normal. But just to fill in the blanks, in grade school, I think it was 5th or 6th grade, we moved to the Pennsylvania, on to the east side of the country, and stayed there through my as I was graduating junior high, and transferred to California, the Bay Area, San Francisco, in my freshman year of high school. And actually moved one more time when we were in California to another high school in San Jose. And then my junior year, I moved back to Minnesota and graduated high school from Fridley High School. And so that, as those formative years, they're all formative years, but those were spent 3 high schools in 4 years is I think fairly significant.
Mm-hmm. Was moving around as you did, was that difficult for you?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. That was not an easy, there was, I was probably in danger of not graduating high school. I mean, I had spent, let's face it, how can you possibly assimilate the culture from moving from Minnesota to Pennsylvania, which was even more conservative than Minnesota, particularly in the 70s, which is when I was going to high school, and then moving to California, and hippies, and significantly a different culture. I didn't fit in anywhere. I mean, it was, it wasn't. I wasn't close to anything as far as my school goes. I had a couple of. I didn't know I was going to get into this. I had a couple of grounding things. One was playing hockey, which was my entire family was incredibly involved with that. And even when we were in a place that shouldn't have had hockey, I was playing hockey. I think the first thing my dad ever did when he came into a town was he'd research where the ice rink was, and inevitably he'd have a key. So that was huge. The other is that I spent a lot of time with my dog, a Newfoundland. But yeah, there was a point in time when I was in California that somebody gave my parents a call and said, that Scott hasn't been to school in almost a month, and so there was some intervention there as to what I was going to do. And I had some pretty talented instructors and people and counselors that got me involved with, and probably are to blame for the lifestyle I live today. They got me involved in a recreational leadership program that I was not. I was told I was not in the right grade to get involved with, but I got involved anyway. And so I learned to rock climb and backpack and spend time in the Sierras, and nothing that has anything to do with dog sledding now, but it probably was a path that directed me. And I have a family member. My grandfather was quite involved with Boy Scouts and things like that. So, but yeah, it was difficult. To answer your question, it was hugely difficult, and I think would have been for anybody.
Yeah, I think so, especially in as you said, most years are formative for people, but that time of your life is usually difficult.
There's all kinds of angst.
Yes. Angst is a good word.
Angst is a good word, yeah.
You mentioned your dog.
Yeah.
What was the name of your Newfoundland?
There were actually two of them. One was named Gibraltar, and the other one was named Ragnar. His full name was Ragnar Grand Zeppelin, so big blimp. And Ragnar, apparently, we did not name him. We got him from somebody who was needed to have a home for him. But beautiful dogs and wonderful companions, and I just wandered all over the Santa Cruz Mountains and the California hills outside of San Francisco when there were lots of open land, and I don't know that that's the case anymore, but yeah, it just it was just a thing I did.
So you got interested in, the recreation side of life. What was next for you after high school? Where did you want to go? You had been to all these places already. What were you thinking was next?
Well, I think I was a little lost. I came to Fridley ahead of my parents, and because my father wanted me to become eligible to play for the high school hockey team. And so I actually spent time with my grandparents and my coach and all kinds of things just to make so that right after Christmas break I'd be eligible. So hockey was still huge. And I think there was some hope that I was going to have some sort of career after high school. And that really didn't. I don't think that was what I wanted, but maybe, at any rate, after high school, I did some stints in college. I went from a junior college, which was at that time Anoka Ramsey in Coon Rapids, and was president of the outing club there and stuff like that. And then I went to Bemidji State and spent some time there. And then my roommates all bailed, and I came home, and then I enrolled at the university, and I was in my 5th year of college with no foreseeable graduating future, and majoring in philosophy, which was much to my father's consternation, and maybe everybody else's too, and I didn't know what I was doing, looking for an answer. But all this time and I didn't have scholarships, and I didn't have, I had lots of loans, but I was working for ski shops, and I worked for Eastern Mountain Sports, and I worked for Midwest Mountaineering, and I was, in a shop that's no longer called The Lift, and at one point in time, I was offered a position to manage the cross-country ski shop for this company, and I told my parents I was going to take a break from school for a year, and I was going to make some money and try and do something that had a direction. And 12 years later, I was still there as a buyer and some other things. So I think a lot of us in that particular time period in that shop grew up together. We were in each other's weddings, and we were in, we recreated together, we worked together, we did everything together. It was a lifestyle as opposed to a job.
That, being in college for 5 years, and you said you just felt like, I don't know where I'm going here.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's so common, and a lot of times that pressure of being a junior, now I think it's even earlier, sophomore, freshman in high school, and people saying, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And how do you even fathom that at that age? So I'm just curious, through those years, what you were thinking, and was that stressful for you?
Yes, yeah, it was incredibly stressful. I mean, there was that, I wish I'd graduate, but I wish I would graduate with something that I could use, that would make any sense, that, I loved college. It was interesting. I loved philosophy. It was interesting. I was looking for something that I didn't find. I stupidly thought that, philosophers had answers, but philosophers just have questions. And that is the nature of that particular, aspect of learning, is that it's all about questions. And so even though I continued with it, and I loved to read about it, and I loved to talk about it, and I loved to baffle people's brains, and I thought I was smart. I thought I was an academic. Thought maybe I'd teach college, but I wasn't that good, and I still didn't know where I was going, and I was profoundly unhappy, I think.
I love the idea of you were looking for answers, but in philosophy. And when I was in college, that was my most frustrating class that I had to take because I could not get an answer, and I like answers.
There were no answers. Yes,
there are no answers, just more questions.
Indeed, yeah. It just more answers. It just, and there were really, philosophy is one of those things that I don't think mediocre students aspire to, and so the competition, just to hold a conversation with anybody in class, or even listen to a professor who may not realize it, but probably did not speak in any English that I understood, and just it was hard, but it was also incredibly, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I wouldn't be the person I am. I don't think I'd have the conversations that I do now. Because, a lot of people thought, I was the stereotypical jock, and jocks don't have brains. But if you started if you could hold a conversation with a letter that had more than 2 syllables, that might have blown them away, and that was always fun.
Mm-hmm. And you consider yourself a self-proclaimed philosopher, right?
No, I'm not. No.
That's what I heard. Little birdie told me that.
Yeah,
But what does that mean to you? Is it how you go about your days? Is it how you live your life?
I do live my life, and I it's taken me a long time. I wish it hadn't taken me as long as it did to start to accept the fact that there aren't answers, and that. Maybe there are, but it isn't where I was looking. So, does my ego like to hear that I'm a philosopher? Maybe it does. But yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not very good at it.
But it seems like something you did have passion for while you were in school, and it intrigued you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the goal, right? It doesn't always lead to maybe a lifelong career, but it's something that you still find curiosity in.
Oh, yeah. Philosophers, I had I had an image of, we have images of what cowboys are, and we have images of what hockey players are, and we have images of what newscasters are, and all that stuff, what they do daily and don't do and stuff. And I had this image of myself as being, and I like to portray that image. I'm not sure I was that, but I aspired to be well-read and hold a conversation that was more than just, who won the football game. And as far as a philosophy of life, I don't know that I have one yet. I have come to trust your dogs. That's my philosophy of life. It's the best part of my day. It's the best part of my day.
I totally agree with you. I love my dogs.
Good.
Proud dog mom.
Yeah.
Speaking of dogs, you are a dog breeder.
Well, I'm not really a breeder, and because one year I got to put on my taxes as my occupation as musher, and so that's how I didn't make a living that year, but that's what I define myself as, and I raise sled dogs, I've had litters, but I did not, we did not have litters to sell.
Yep.
It's not an income generator. Anybody who's had a litter of puppies knows that, it's a good way to lose. It costs way more in time and energy than it does to anything else. But we have two, our kennels kind of melded, Susan and I. She has had forever, since I met her, had what are called Irish red and white setters. These are not the red setters that we mostly know. These are actually an older breed, but connected, but genetically different. And so they are red and white, and they don't look the same. And they're rare. They're actually somewhat rare. Then I have always had, or since '91, had sled dogs, and in one form or another. And that's how I define myself. Now, that's how I met Susan. She was trying to do something that I already was or already could do. And she stopped into the ski shop one day, and she said, I want to have my cross-country skis waxed because there's this thing called ski joring, where a team of dogs or a single dog will pull you on cross-country skis. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to enter a race, and she wanted the skis to be ready to go. And the owner of the store said, I think you ought to meet somebody. And so, as they say, the rest is history. Wow. We've used the red and whites as sled dogs, and we've also I have the purpose-bred sled dogs, mm-hmm. and so that's how I define myself as a musher.
When did you get into the ski joring? Or how were you introduced to that?
Oh boy, so. At some point in time, this was back in '89, I had been in the ski industry for a long time. I was fairly disillusioned with working for bigger companies. I had actually spent some time in Vermont managing a shop that didn't go well. I came back. I was working for Eastern Mountain Sports. I was in a situation where I was able, it probably wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done, but I quit. And I went back to school. And I actually enrolled in a 2-year program as a veterinary technician. So I went back to school at like plus 30, 30 plus. Mm-hmm. When I graduated in '91, I said, they said, why did you, everybody, one of the questions was, why are you? Why do you want to come, to school and go back to school and do this stuff? And I said, I want to be able to administer to my sled dogs. And I had this vision of maybe having a tour company or something. Anyway, I'm realizing that, there's a whole lot of things that go into having enough dogs to do that, not the least of which is location. Well, I wanted to become a musher. I went to work for a clinic. The clinic got me connected with somebody who had sled dogs. And I said, would you like to sell a dog to me? She said, you're going to come and spend some time at the kennel for a while. Mm-hmm. And she took me to a race. And I realized that I didn't have the room for 20 or 30 dogs, but I could have one or two. I saw somebody cross-country skiing behind their dog, and I saw this race. And the race kind of told me that there were two kinds of teams. Ones with really good dogs and lousy skiers, and one with really good skiers and lousy dogs. And I wasn't a bad skier. I had raced the Birkebeiner, I had raced the Mora Vasaloppet, and done a few other things, taught some skiing. And so I thought, I could do this. And that's what I did.
Wow.
That was the first step.
So you've really had a history, even when you felt like you didn't really know, like, what am I going to do after college, or when I decided to leave college? But you kept going back to that recreational sport. Mm-hmm. And specifically, you are an enthusiast of silent sports.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. I'm not sure if everyone is aware that there's a term for overarching those skiing and sports like that.
Yeah, it's really it's the mantra of the store right now is silent sports. But yeah, I've always looked at, and I grew up in that back to Earth. I was part of the first Earth Day in high school, and that. So I've always been drawn to snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, all those things that are human-powered and quiet. Mushing is like that. Doesn't start out quiet, but it gets quiet real fast. Bicycling, mountain biking we do, and things like that. So paddling. So yeah, it's always been the human-powered stuff that I've been drawn to. and the so-called silent sports. But yeah, that whole genre is what I thought. Well, that was my philosophy, right? Kind of eschew the motors and things like that, and be able to do something where you didn't have to. You got there on your own.
I'm curious if there's a connection to moving around so much when you were growing up, and you probably spent. Well, you said one of your dogs was your best friend, and you spent time alone, of course, because of how often you moved around.
Right.
Do you think there's a connection there to that comfort in those sports where it's just you and nature and quiet?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. Those human-powered sports, one of the questions you guys asked me is something what drove me, and I think I referenced something to fear. And if it scares you, you should probably do it. Not because I'm bold in any way, because I'm really not. And I was always very timid, and I did not play well with people in terms of, I was always scared of things like ridicule. Maybe I was drawn to that solitude and that quiet because there were, I could be me. There were nobody was judging. I always had this standard line that, the mountain doesn't care if it kills you. It has no animosity. And I always felt a little like humans could have. But.
How did you, so let's kind of go through the timeline. So you find this sport that you love in ski joring. How did you end up in Balkan? And now you have, this sort of career in this field and in the recreational sports field. So kind of walk me through how you got to that point.
Well, I think it's fits and starts a little bit. In '91, I got the first dog, and my partner at the time, we expanded the kennel a little bit, and ski touring was something that I got better dogs, and we did some various, we started racing, and I found I was pretty good at it. And if you're pretty good at it, for whatever reason, whether it's lucky or whether or not you've got some physical aptitude or something, you have a tendency to gravitate towards it and continue on with it. And so ski touring was a big deal for me for a while. I was teaching classes in it. I did a bunch of public speaking, seminars and things like that. I had a couple of papers, do interviews, just all that stuff that strokes your ego and makes you want to go more and more and be more and more serious with it. And then, of course, the adage that life gets in the way, relationships fall apart, whatever it is, things like that. So it's always been something that I've come back to, but it hasn't been a continuous, there hasn't been this, there hasn't been a constant rise in it. There's been pits and, and valleys and peaks. And right now, the thing that I have learned is that really it's not about the race. It's not about the accolades, although they're wonderful. Don't let them stop coming. But it's about the fact that I really feel at peace with these guys, and it's all about the dogs. It's really all about the dogs, and I have so much fun spreading the word about that, because there's a lot of people that have started doing this kind of thing because of me or because of whatever they wanted to do in the first place, and they're just getting as much joy as I am. I have a friend, Cruzlin, over. She's in Indiana, and I've only met her face to face a couple of times, but mushers know mushers, and she has this thing. Her her Facebook page is enlightenment through sled dogs, you know, and she just believes that they're spirit guides and all kinds of weird things like that. But it's probably not that far from the truth, you know. Dogs do pretty amazing things.
Yeah, their senses, and I don't just mean their nose and those senses, but when, like, for example, my dogs who don't do mushing or anything like that.
Yeah.
But they, if I'm not feeling well, they know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They know. And it's so incredible and so comforting, too.
It's been 5 years now. I had a pretty severe case of melanoma. And significant amount of surgery on my forearm to remove the tumor. But they got it all, and I did not have to go through chemo, and I did not have to go through a lot of the other stuff. So it seems to me a little like a dream, other than the surgery and some residuals and being checked often, you know, and being very familiar with what it's like to be stuck in an MRI tube. I have a dog. Her name is Zion, and she inevitably every day, when I went out to feed her, she would sniff my arm through 5 or 6 layers of coats. It doesn't matter. And if she turned away, and I knew I was okay.
Wow.
It probably isn't the case, but she just likes to sniff my arm. I don't know. No, I mean, but it's really interesting because that is the only arm she sniffs, and she never did it before. And of course, maybe it's the surgery, who knows? But it made me feel good, you know. But they do have if you're messed up that day, it just transmits itself right down the line. Every dog on the team knows whether you're having a bad day or a good day, or whether or not you're uncertain, because they look to you for all the, you know, you are, after all, if they lose confidence in you, you know, all is lost, you know.
Do you have a favorite memory from the different races that you've participated in? Or maybe it doesn't have to be a favorite, but just one that sticks out to you.
I had a dog named Snickers, and she was leader, and I was doing all ski joring at that point in time. And back then, you could do 3-dog ski joring. You could either have a 1, 2, or 3-dog team, and I chose to have 3-dog teams. And we were in Cannon Falls, Minnesota, and the snow was coming, and there was wind, and you know, and the trail on the backside was blowing in constantly, and it was. Our events were 2 days, so the fastest combined time of 2 days. And I was in first, which means you don't get anybody to chase, which sometimes makes the dogs run slower. But you also have those people behind you that can catch you, and you go out at 2-minute intervals, so you don't know exactly. If somebody's catching you, you know they've caught up time, but you don't know how much. So as time got closer and we were on the backside of the trail where it was most drifted in, I was getting fairly nervous about the, you know, how close people were and how they were, and I really wanted to win this thing. And Snickers is out front leading the team, and as the trail got more obscure, I would give her the command to go left or right, which is G or Ha. And so as I'm going around the trail, I'm calling G and Ha to help Snickers make it around the trail, not thinking that, you know, she's got way more experience than I ever thought I could have. They can feel the trail, the feet in their feet. They don't have to see it. They don't have to do the same things we do. They're much, much more attuned to it. And I think she just got tired of me yelling, because the more you talk to sled dogs, the less they listen. So I'm talking a lot. And when we got to a right-hand turn, I called left. She took the team off the trail into the most obscure snowbank. You know, she knew exactly where the trail was, but she did exactly what I asked her to. And she put everybody in the snowbank. I'm standing there in my skis, and their team's all tangled up and everything. And she looks over her shoulder, and like, so what do you want me to do now? And I did get them back on the trail. She got them back on the trail. And she looked over her shoulder again, and of course I'm anthropomorphizing, but honestly, I'm sure she just said, if you want to win this thing, just shut up and let me lead, and that was it. I didn't say another word the rest of the time. I didn't call them up going home. I just let her take the thing in, and we did win. But I always thought that, these dogs teach us more than we could ever teach them.
So from then on, you followed her lead.
I follow her lead explicitly. I still miss her. She's passed away, obviously, but yeah, I have a picture of her in my office. Yeah, she's pretty. Actually, the Minneapolis, the Tribune did a picture, or did a outdoor section on us once, and there's a picture of her, me holding my skis, and I'm kneeling down, and she's up like this with her nose in my face. But I now have another Snickers. I did not name her, but the Snickers is not like the old one, but has traits all her own.
I would imagine that would be, with so many dogs and the emotional connection that you have with them.
Right.
Yeah, any injury or any time they cross the Rainbow Bridge,
right.
Yeah, that's got to be really tough.
And they do it together too. So, we right now I have a litter of puppies that are now turned 2 years old, and they're my breeding, and I kept 4 of them out of 7, and they're all going to age together, and they're all going to run together, and it's wonderful right now. But when they're all 12 and 13, they're all going to die together, and that is hurt a lot of, because they all age out at the same time, and so you lose dogs in groups, and that's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, it's a lump in my throat thinking about that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of your love of recreation and the outdoors, and then philosophy. I just think the crossover is so good. Do you think you'll ever get the answers?
No.
And how does that make you feel? Are you comfortable with that?
I'm getting more comfortable with it. No, I think there probably are no answers. I don't know. The thing is that if I keep thinking that I'm going to be just as full of turmoil as I always was, and I'm in a lot better place than I was. And that comes, I think, God, I wish it didn't come with age, but I guess it does. At least it came, because right now I can, life is never perfect, right? I mean, there's just all kinds of terrible things, and things that annoy you and all that stuff. But I've found that, the hiccups, one of the things about outdoors people and, climbers and mushers and things like that is they're able to pivot. And that's one of the things that I never was able to do at the beginning. If it didn't work out right the way I wanted it, I'd just pick up my ball and go home. And I've gotten a lot better at, if I want to do this stuff, it's never going to go the way I've expected it to. I can make all the plans, I can make all the preparations, but and that is a philosophy. There's no question. That is a philosophy. It's not a very elegant one, but it is a philosophy. It is that, you got to be able to pivot, and there are more questions than answers.
I was going to say, I think that's a great philosophy. Figuring out a way to pivot instead of just saying, I'm done. I'm not going to try and figure it out or do it a different way.
Well, there was a song, and I loved it a while back. It was, philosophy is a walk on a slippery rock. Religion's a smile on a dog. I think it's true.
Yeah. What would you view as a good life? What's a good life for you?
I have one. Indeed. But yeah, I still want to be good at what I do. I'd like to be the best at what I do, but as long as I'm good enough, I think that works. sometimes I have to kick myself and sit back and go, you've earned the respect of a lot of people. There are a lot of people that I consider friends, and I think they consider me friends, and that's a privilege. That's really a privilege.
When I'm just thinking back to the beginning of our conversation, when you were a teenager and not going to school, just kind of not interested, and then someone introduced you to the rock climbing and those sports, and now looking ahead, I mean, that is kind of the path that your life went on, not necessarily rock climbing, but the recreational sports. Does that surprise you? Did you expect that to be where you would land?
Not until later, but I kept coming back to it. It's one of those things that I never, it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. Maybe it was the one thing I was good at. I certainly wasn't good at baseball or football. I was good at hockey, but that couldn't last forever. I didn't make a living at it. One brother out of 3 who did is good enough. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I finally realized that it was where I wanted to be, and my mom just passed away on Christmas Day. And she, every time I'd see her, and I didn't see her often enough, I'm sure, but every time I'd see her, she'd go, you're not getting any younger. Aren't you getting a little old for this? And I'd going, I'm going to keep doing it until I can't. Or how long are you going to do this? And the terrible thing is Mom introduced me to this stuff. She had dogs all her life, and there was all this stuff that she did. I just did it to a bigger extreme, but she'd always go, do you really need 22 dogs? Well, Mom, no. Yeah, maybe I do. Come to think of it, I would not be as good a person if I didn't have 22 dogs. Mm-hmm. But,
Isn't that a beautiful thing, though, that you found something, even if people want to say, aren't you ever going to give that up, or aren't you too old for that, but you find so much joy in it that you can continue to do it until you don't want to anymore.
Exactly. I don't see any reason not to. Mm-hmm. I just, like I said, I look at, Colonel Norman Vaughan ran the Iditarod when he was 80. Mm-hmm. I started thinking about maybe I'd do the Iditarod one day. Susan's going, I said, I'm going to need more dogs. She's like, over my dead body.
But I think that really for so many people that the goal would be to find something to do for the rest of your life that makes you happy and brings you joy.
Indeed.
So
yeah. And I guess I never thought about, there are days I get up and I go, it's 20 below, I don't want to go feed them.
Yeah.
Or, oh man, I'm tired, and when am I going to get some sleep? When am I going to dust the house, or whatever, but these dogs need to be run. And, 5 and 6 hours in the cold, hooking 20 dogs up, and sitting on the back of a four-wheeler, because there's no snow right now and it's cold and it's dark, But, boy, when they're done, or when they're going and when they every time they see you, they're so excited. It's extraordinary. It's just extraordinary.
That's great. Anything else that you...
No, this has been enjoyable.
Yeah.
This has really been fun.
Thank you. It's been so great getting to know you. You have such a interesting background and
well, thanks.
Road to how you got here, which I think is so relatable to many people. Like, not everybody has the answer when they're in high school or in college. Like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to get this degree and then get this job.
Right.
Most people don't have that.
No, and I don't know that we should.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we should, but my dad, for all the things that he might have been disappointed, in as far as what I did, had this great, he said, I didn't make that 4-year from freshman to senior path like he did, but he always said college was to learn, and that's been a lifelong deal.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us on No Filter. I just loved hearing your story and getting to know you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was good. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Meet you.
Yes.